wealth, far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. That was what I had now. Godfall had provided, yet the sea shower was looking more and more a floating grave. We had but the smallest amount of fuel remaining and no supplies left to burn. Our options were few. The crew looked panicked, and I could not blame them. My own desire, my own dream to find those bones that had led us here. And now there was but one choice. A desperate measure. A plea to those beyond, to the gods. Would any hear our cry? We would pray. We would call out to any ear that would hear. Of all the gods that may listen, Stone was the choice of the crew. She was said to be the kindest god of the sea. That's not saying very much. She has a great wound from which a river of blood is said to flow. If I were to wound myself in memory of her, perhaps she might show us mercy. I sliced deep, and the ship's doctor bandaged the wound as effectively as he could. I paced the deck, ignoring the pain as best I could. The engineer approached. There's more fuel in the bins than I realized. Just a bit. I'd looked 3 times, but I was sure there wasn't any there before, but now it might be enough. After recovering, yet before leaving, monks of Godfall beckoned our ship. They sought of me to speak to their newest member.
Used to be a sailor.
One whispered.
We were hoping you could help us work out what's wrong.
An old, bearded man sat cross-legged and naked in Godfall's smallest monastic cell. At the sight of our group, he flinched, his wrinkled skin covered in faded scars. No more freedom, he whispered. 10 of the clock, we sweep. 15 past 10 of the clock, we wash. There are no orders. There must be orders. No more freedom. Please. A monk handed him a mop and bid him clean the entire chapel by first bell. The supplicant squeezed it tight. Yes, master, he whispered, tears of gratitude welling up in his eyes as he scampered off. There was an awkward silence.
He should make a very devout monk,
one of the others ventured.
Once we finally get him into the habit.
Khan's heart was but a short journey to the north. Without our light on, there was a chance we could make it yet, however slim. We were alive with a hope that I had seldom experienced. We set our course north across the Antonine abyss. There, a corvette crossed our path. We could not afford a fight. Onwards we pressed. As flares and cannons fired, they chased us all the way to Ogday's bridge. But we had made it. Somehow, we were still alive. The Copper Quarter was close, and with it, a chance to seek salvation. We cheered, we embraced, some kissed. We were still alive, the august travel writer. Happier, perhaps, than even I. The writer set off across the planks with good speed, his steamer trunk in his arms. A storyteller pestered me for coins as I ate my dinner at a steam-filled restaurant. I threw him a coin for quiet. But before I could resume my meal, an explosion tore through the next street. Citizens, sailors, and white and golds hurried to the crater once the smoke had cleared. I could see the innards of a secret shipyard. Torn brass and steel, mangled faces staring lifelessly from the rubble. The white and golds argued in their own tongue. The storyteller ambled up to me.
They are saying that the Leopard made underwater ships here in violation of an agreement with London, he whispered. They say London's assassin has visited. You might wish to slip away.
Indeed, I did wish to do just that. Yet we could not before we acquired fuel and supplies. The Carnate merchants grinned once they saw me coming. An unlicensed foreign captain. They'll pick a price and triple it. There was a rattle of coal. Where did the Carnate even find its fuel? So far from hell. The lumps of coal had a swimming blue-green sheen. It was expensive at 50 echoes, yet it would keep the sea shower fed. Now came our own mouths. Foreigners were permitted to buy food in the Copper Quarter, but only in small quantities. And so I went from street vendor to street vendor, trying to purchase enough soggy smoked fish to feed the crew. They watched as I carried armfuls of brown paper bags past the canals back to my ship. They knew I was skirting the edge of the law. Either they didn't care enough to stop me, or they were having too much fun watching me carry all that smoked fish. Returning to the shower and poring over the map, Irem came next. We could buy more fuel, more supplies, and most importantly, acquire a Z story worthy of the Fathom King's attention. Before leaving, I sought to wander the heart, with no intention to linger long. There were narrow streets, green-tinted bulbs, and crowds along the canal, oddly hushed. It was peaceful. The quiet street was washed in serpent green light from the bulbs overhead. The houses here were dark, empty-seeming, paint peeled and bats chittered. A single shop, however, was open. Its windows glowed with candlelight. The shopkeeper was a tall woman with pale eyes, not a local but not a Londoner either. She blowed dust off a baize box and smiled toothily at me. There were a number of interesting objects, yet the one that caught my eye more than any was a pot of violent ink. Good for diaries, if you have something to confess. The pot was tightly sealed, the glass cool to the touch, and when I grasped it, a soft light spilled between my fingers. My skin tingled as if from too much sun. And so with that, we left the Copper Quarter behind, extinguishing our light while we were within the city limits. Conserving fuel would be important, even with 2 allotments of coal. Passing under the Great Gate, we set our course to the northeast. Irem beckoned. Stories, food, and fuel. Every voyage was a danger, but these days I could sense it all around us, like a warm, enveloping fog. A fog that we experienced near great, ancient bones. But we were close now. The Nablus Reef marked the warm winds of Irem. Another voyage nearly complete. On our final unit of fuel and food, we arrived in Carlisle's haven. First came a report, much the same as ever here in Irem. A report I could not even recall writing, yet here it was, in front of me all the same. Then came a chance to rest. The House of Amber Sky. We had coffee to pay, and rest was most certainly needed. Warm and satisfying. I closed my eyes for only a moment. Beneath the skin of dreams, behind the faces of mirrors, an orange sun sailed in a velvet sky. Here I was in another place. Here I would rest, recover, and dream. Perhaps even exploring a little. It was a dream I had experienced once before, like memories of the Z's past. Claymen, sharks in iron, and the alarming scholar. Terror, for now, was abated, and my mind was filled with memories more than just my own. Wind Come Calling, a place where tales were sold, and it was there a Z story could be acquired. For but 2 tales of terror, the storyteller was willing to trade. To be safe, I would trade for 2. At the Fisher of Dawn could be acquired for but a single secret. It was a sinister little squatting image, but its eyes were pleading. Then there was threshold. A chance to buy fuel and supply alike. Expensive, but worthwhile. First, a strange catch for the cook. Then 5 units of fuel, 5 supplies, and an extra 2 fuel, just to be certain. Looking at our map once again, the journey back to the Fathom King's hold was set to take a number of days. Yet I was confident we had enough supplies to make it. We set off with all haste, hoping to be able to keep our light ignited for a little longer yet. Back across the Reef we travelled, to the south, towards the Gant Pole. Through great beasts we passed, while avoiding others in the dark. Shableport of the Shellinate was the next to enter our sight. We would stop, if only for a report. No matter what details I tried to record, the stench crept around the edges of the sentences. The Shellinites watchful despite the reek. Movements among the miasmic scraps of long-abandoned monster carcasses. Frequent duels where the stink was the thickest. We left with haste, turning our attention to the south once more, leaving the shell and its monster hunters behind. Out of the shadows emerged a ship, long abandoned. This was the Nocturne, or the wreck of it. Turning about, I sought to board. It was shrouded with shadows, wrapped with webs. The webbed hulk of its once proud vessel refused to be dragged beneath the black waves. Superstitions of the sea gave even cynical sailors pause before ransacking half-drowned vessels. Still, nothing in the code prohibits indulging curiosity. We had but 1 foxfire candle, enough to proceed. The fate of the Nocturne was well known, and proven by the web stretching across its battered hull. Aside from those and a few signs of struggle, the contents lay undisturbed. After all, what use have the masters of Saviour's rocks for trinkets, baubles, gold, and gems? If the crew and passengers were lucky, they merely became lunch. If not, well, I've heard stories. The kind of sea stories saved for campfires on distant shores and cold nights when the rigging creaks. Of the Tree of Ages, a harbinger of doom, crewed by sorrow spiders. What happened to the lovers who found Storm's broken heart in a sandalwood box? The suicide songs of... no. Mere superstitious nonsense, of course. Of course. Even so, it remains a relief when the candle finally melted away and it was time to leave this place to the waves and rocks. Lower on supplies, once again, we were close. The Fathom King's hold, with all we needed now to descend. Lorcan's port beckoned, with it the deep dark of the hold. It was time to descend. The porter had the skin of a shark. She had a drowned woman's eyes. It was not permitted to look at her hands.
Yes,
She rasped.
that story is sufficient.
She opened the valves of pearl and permitted me to pass into the conduit. This was the salt-blown heart of the hold. The Fathom King floated in his throne, a gem-starred bowl of sea stone the size of a banqueting table. He was wearing a gown of purple brocade, soaked dark with salt water. He leaned his chin calmly on his hand, beneath the surface of the water in his throne. His hidden regions pulsed constantly. Your complexity, I began. I have a more personal petition. You know something of my father, or what remains of him. The words were spoken. His complexity watched me, his eyes cold as polished stones, but a smile lurked at the corner of his mouth, like an eel in ambush. I sought to ask exactly who this Mr. Volumus was, and why the Fathom King was sending parcels to him.
Come now, I will give you the address you need. For the small consideration we discussed, but I won't share personal information so easily. I have my business with the masters of the Bazaar. It is not always a pleasant business.
He shrugged. There are ripples.
One has one's duties.
Your complexity. There is a question only you can answer. To open the final gate of my journey to my father's bones, I ask this boon of you. It was a reach, but it could be the assistance I needed.
You are fortunate,
the Fathom King announced.
I have only a few small requests. Fulfill them, and I shall teach you what you need to know. Bring me the heart of a legend. Bring me a light from the sky. Bring me a willing guest to stay with me forever. Witness the end of the eldest among its kind. Bring me word. Bring me the fruit of an eternal tree. And something scientific, modern, cutting edge, I believe is the term. My bride enjoys that sort of thing.
He sat back, undredence, pulsing with expectation.
You seem quite capable,
he added carelessly.
I'm sure it's not too much trouble.
A legend's heart, one of the great monsters, Mount Nomad, or the Tree of Ages, perhaps. For the miracle of science, an engine or a weapon of unique brilliance, my officers could perhaps help. Skylight, sunlight, something that would pass for sunlight. A willing guest, an officer, one who had finished their business with the Z, and one that might be willing to stay in the King's Court. More than likely someone who preferred fish, but to witness the death of something that is the oldest of its kind, that would be tricky, as would the fruit, which would not die. None of these were small tasks, all of them far beyond what I ever imagined. I was all but done. However, there was a Carnagian emissary, a visitor from the Taime clan, in grey robes patterned with leaping fish. She described events at the Khan's court, skirmishes with the Shelanate, Z-beast attacks. At last the king nodded and awarded the emissary a pouch of drowning pearls. The hour of audience was past. Thorn-armored guards escorted me back to the surface. But the emissary's words and the king's questions had taught me a great deal. Strategic information that the Admiralty would care for. And here we were, once again, back aboard the Shower, sitting in Lorcan's port, hopeful and hopeless, both at the same time. We had lived more days than perhaps we should have. Now, more than ever, we all dreamt of home. Terror was creeping in, living so close to the precipice of death. It's not healthy for the mind, nor the soul, even for one as soulless as I. We'd not dream easily this coming night, yet rest we would. For in the morn we continue on. A Z captain's voyage is never truly over, lest I become like that man in the cell, lost, without purpose, without direction, a slave to the tide, a janitor for monks. This writer, this captain, hopes for something more, if nothing else, bones and an answer.